Tell me a fact and I'll learn. Tell me a truth and I'll believe. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. The Names Not Numbers Oral History Film Documentary Project is remembering the stories of the Holocaust and is telling the story of the Holocaust for the world to hear, for the world to learn, and to inspire future generations to combat anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred and intolerance. This unique project is in its 16th year. Over 2,500 survivors and 6,000 students have participated in it worldwide. The students were instructed by teachers and professionals. They learned interviewing techniques from journalists. They learned filming techniques and editing skills from documentary filmmakers. The students interviewed, filmed, and edited the 2-hour interviews with each survivor to make 20-minute oral histories that are compiled in the Names Not Numbers documentary at the school. You're about to view the documentary Names Not Numbers, a movie in the making. This film chronicles the students as they are being trained by the professionals and includes their reflections. In it is embedded approximately 10 minutes from each interview. This is the students' work. They're filmed and edited interviews. Through this project, our students are preserving history, and they are the witnesses to the witnesses.
This is not just another assignment. It is a rare opportunity to carry the stories of individuals who lived through history's darkest times and ensure their names and lives are never forgotten.
Names Not Numbers is a program dedicated to making sure the lives of people who went through the atrocities of the Holocaust are remembered forever, and that they weren't just the names that were unfortunately tattooed upon them, but they were actual people with lives and families and souls.
Behind every statistic is a name, a face, a life filled with hopes and dreams. That's precisely what you will be doing here, making history personal, giving voices back to those who were silenced.
Names Not Numbers is such an inspiring organization because it creates the opportunity for us to keep the stories of Holocaust survivors alive and make sure that younger and future generations are educated on stories and experiences that happen, and it's so important to never forget about that tragic event.
You are very privileged to be the tail end of this generation, that you can ask your questions. You can find out from the people who were there what they went through. To do this, you have professionals who will be teaching you interviewing techniques, our journalists. You have documentary filmmaking and editing skills. By the way, the cameras that you see in the hall here, these are broadcast quality cameras used in the film industry. These are the cameras that you will be using to film your interview.
Today we heard a presentation from Tova, and we learned about the importance of preserving the Holocaust, and we also learned several techniques to interview survivors and how dealing with a survivor may be a little bit different than interviewing somebody else.
The survivors and the students are telling the story of the Holocaust for the world to hear, for the world to learn, and to inspire future generations to combat anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred and intolerance. You are learning history, recording history, and preserving history through your work.
You have the last remaining survivors that you can tell their story. You're going to be learning incredible skills, journalism, research, writing, filming. You all have chosen to be here. You are the next generation of America's leaders.
Interviewing for me was the best thing about journalism. It wasn't about being on TV, it wasn't about sitting there in front of a camera and reading off a teleprompter. Anybody can do that, right?
I'm really excited about the interviewing portion of the project. It would be absolutely amazing to talk to someone who grew up in Poland and Germany, someone who was actually there for the event.
Now, as interviewers, I would say the most important thing is just to be human, right? It's the same qualities that make you a good human that will make you a good interviewer. Are you empathetic? Are you showing kindness? Are you listening to the person that you're interviewing?
I think interviewing them in person is different than just reading a book, because in a book you could always read about their stories, but in an interview you could see the emotion behind the experiences, so you could really grasp the extent to which the Holocaust impacted them.
But the more engaged you are, the more you're able to think of maybe of a follow-up question, or you're listening, or you're asking the question in a confident and appropriate manner, they're going to do a better job of answering the question.
We were told to speak louder at many parts because the survivors, many of them have impaired hearing and English may not even be their first language.
We were prepared for the interview by really reading about her story, by writing questions that we had down, going over it with each other, practicing asking the questions to each other.
A big thing is also too is putting the interview subject at ease. There's a tremendous age gap between what you guys bring to the table as interviewers and the person that you're interviewing. Just think about that. In some instances, up to 70 years, I guess, I would think. You have to immediately break down the barriers of letting them know that they can trust you, that they're in good hands, that you're passionate about this project, you want to do the best job possible. But it's intimidating. You have cameras all around. I'm guessing there's going to be lights. They're wearing a microphone. That can be kind of a dicey situation. It's scary sometimes. But the more that you can do to make it just a conversation between two people, you're two people connecting on a level of really trying to understand each other and trying to better understand this incredible tragedy that was in our world history, which is the Holocaust.
Basically, we have like a wider shot with one camera, and then we have a close-up shot for our survivor. And the same we're getting for that camera, but we're gonna be like switching in the camera, and I'll show you how to do this for the student.
Yeah, right before the interview, we got to test the cameras and the headphones, audio equipment, the microphones.
So with the cameras, we were told that we have to know the certain shots for what we were doing, and we had the close-up is from the shoulders up, the middle is from the waist up, and the full is like the whole room.
No, close-up is kind of to show the more emotion though. It's to show what's going on in that situation, how he really feels. It actually goes into, kind of goes into depth. It really it gives you a feel for it.
This is called like the rule of thirds. So according to this rule, we have to place the subject on one side. So basically we're giving her some room in front of her, letting a viewer know that she's looking somewhere off the screen. She's talking to a person like on the other side.
Having the person that's being interviewed and the interviewer not looking at the camera and making sure that they look at the person that they're speaking to really and capture and make it more professional and show the conversation between the two.
When you are face to face with the survivor, you see where they've been through, and you get a personal relationship with them to understand how tragic it was during those times and what they've been through and why they're sitting here today sharing their story to the world, and they want their story to go on and people to hear it.
I'm going to be interviewing Melvin Grossman.
I will be interviewing Anita Koch.
Today, I am going to interview Leo Kimmel.
I'm interviewing Mordecai Samuel.
I'm really excited to hear the story. I feel like I have a kind of responsibility to show everyone what all these Holocaust survivors went through so that anti-Semitism can finally stop.
As the years go on, there's not going to be any Holocaust survivors, so they're not going to be able to tell their story, so we're essentially going to have to tell their story for them.
It's a very difficult subject for a lot of survivors, and being able to talk to one, I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity because most people can't say, I've met a survivor of the Holocaust.
Immediately I thought that this was something I had to do. It's like non-negotiable. This is something that I could never pass up on, and I think I would regret it in a few years, you know, if I didn't take this opportunity that I am now, because I think it's an incredible thing that we're able to do, and I'm honored to be able to be part of this.
My name is Mel Grossman. Nice to meet you. I, Mel Grossman, was born in Tarnogrod, Poland, January 27, 1939. The Jewish community was a little village, Tarnogrod, mostly Jewish people, mostly religious. Before the war, my parents were married. I have an older brother. I had an older brother who was 3 years older than me, and that's basically what I know. My mother was actually a housekeeper, and she did some sewing. My father had a small business that took over for his father. It was a wheat business.
Anita Katsch. I was born in Germany, East Prussia, 1932, 6 months before Hitler was elected Chancellor of Germany. When my mother got married, she moved in, that is in Europe, the children usually live with their parents. And my grandparents had a very large house, and they set my father up in business. He had a farm, I don't know how many acres of land, and he was breeding and selling horses, and of course cows and chickens, and you know, we took care of the farm. It was very peaceful. People got along. There was no anti-Semitism.
Mordecai Samuel, S-A-M-E-L. I born in 1936 in a very small town, Janov Podlaski, on the border of Poland and Russia. 10,000 people lived there. Half was Catholics and half was Jewish. My father was the best shoemaker in all Poland. Shoemaker that they make from leather, from scratch, by hand, with wooden nails and strings.
My name is Leo J. Kimmel. July 11th, 1935. My father had a business in Germany, in Frankfurt am Main. My native language was German. We were doing very well in Germany. We had a lot of synagogues in Frankfurt am Main, a lot of big synagogues. Frankfurt am Main had a very large Jewish community. So we had no anti-Semitism, really. I mean, Jews were doing very well. They were in the government offices, and they were very well-to-do. We had a lot of kids, you know. It was a very active synagogue and community. And when I was 3 years old, they had Kristallnacht in 1938. And at that time, the Nazis destroyed the businesses, destroyed our synagogues. Lawyers were discharged from legal, and judges were dismissed. The Nazis really started up with the Jews.
I know that I was not allowed to go out and play, because what happened was that the children between 7 and 14 after school had to join a club called the Hitler Youth. They were indoctrinated how to hate the Jews. They were taught how to curse them, spit on them, call them names. The Hitler Youth came with their little black boots, and they kicked my mother in the shins. And she wasn't allowed to even say a word to them, because if you talk back to a Hitler Youth or you touch them, it's penalty by death.
We have a Gentile, a Catholic, next to our house. My father lived with his Catholic neighbor like two brothers. When he come a Jewish holiday, he bring from his farm chicken and vegetables and everything. And when come a Catholic holiday, my father made for him the best shoes in the world. They live very close, like brothers. When the Nazi army come closer and closer to this village, when my younger brother, he went to this Catholic neighbor to backyard to pick some flowers. A child, you know, he pick cucumbers. So he, the Catholic neighbor, he took a stick and he started to chase, went into the backyard door, home. And he break all the windows on my father's house, and he said in Polish, niech no tylko Hitler przyjdzie, ja was wszystkich Żydów, let's Hitler come here, close, I all you Jews, I cut the throat.
In the small town where we lived, we couldn't even go out and buy food anymore, because every time my parents walked into a store, they said, get the hell out of here, or I'll call the police. Some of them were very, very nice and called my parents and my mother to the side and said, look, I'm so sorry, but I'm afraid if somebody sees I sold you food, they'll arrest me. So we didn't even have food to eat anymore. The Jews could not have anything, could not be anything. The doctors, lawyers, dentists, nobody could practice. They were not declared human. They called us animals. They had no rights whatsoever.
The story goes with me, we escaped just before the Germans hit that town. My father was fortunate enough to know information to escape the village. He knew of the dangers. He used to go to the city of Lublin for his business once a month. That's where the news, he knew all the news, the atrocities that was being done in Europe, and he came back to the small village of Tarnograd to tell people that we couldn't stay, we were in danger, and the Nazis are killing Jews all over Europe, and we have to escape this village. No one listened.
We moved away from our small town to Berlin. We couldn't take anything with us. We had to leave the house, the furniture, the paintings, the dishes, everything that we owned. We had to pack a few suitcases and leave. The only thing to do was to get out of there. My parents thought in a big city like Berlin, they wouldn't know who the Jews are, so we would be able to get some food at least. Once we got to Berlin, we were walking the nights and sleeping during the day. So I really didn't even know we were hiding. And we were 5 people in one bedroom. Luckily, we were too young to realize, and our parents shielded us, didn't let us know what was going on. So we were really in the dark.
The family was my mother, my father, my older brother, Harry, me, and my aunt. My brother was just 3. I was just an infant. He had information that to be on the Russians controlled Poland at that time. So he did, for some reason he knew. I don't know this information, how he found out about the location where it would be safer to be during this Nazi occupation of Poland. All I know is that we got packed into cars, boxcars, trains, and shipped to Siberia to labor camps.
The Russian people, they sent young people like my father, 42 years old. They all send us to Siberia.
We did have an incident once when we were taking the train, my father and I, and while we were on the train, this Gestapo officer with 1 million medals walked in. He sat in the same compartment with us. And again, he didn't ask my father for the passport. And he saluted him with Heil Hitler. And he picked me up and put me on his lap. My father sat there, he said, his heart was beating so loud he thought that the whole world could hear him. He thought he's going to get a heart attack. And he was praying, please don't ask her about Christmas, because I would say I don't celebrate Christmas. And he would find out that I'm Jewish, and I sat on his lap. He touched a Jewish child, which was the biggest crime a Gestapo officer could endure. He would take out the gun and shoot my father and me right there on the train. This incident saved our lives, because when my father came home after this happened, he got my mother and he got us back to the house, and he said, I can't live like this anymore. We have to get out of here. And he walked the streets, I don't know for how many days, and everyone he met, he said, do you know how to get out of Germany? Do you know how to get out? Everybody said no. One person said, I heard that they have tickets at the Jewish agency. I don't know where to, but they have tickets to get out of Germany. My father said, thank you. He ran over there, and sure enough, they had 10 tickets. My father said, I'll buy them all.
So I couldn't go to synagogue because my father was taken away to Dachau concentration camp. My father had employees, and some of the employees became the Nazi party. My mother went to them and asked them if they could get my father out from the concentration camp. And thank God they were successful, and they released my father about a year afterwards. My mother arranged to get transportation out of Germany. And the thing is, there was no country that would take in Jews at that time already. United States, England, no place wanted to take the Jews. So, however, the only place where you didn't need a visa to get there was Shanghai.
I mean, can you imagine? You live here in the United States, you have your friends, you have your family, and somebody says, pack your suitcase and leave. Could you imagine to leave everything? Your family, your cousins, everyone behind, your friends?
So you had to make arrangements to get to Shanghai. So the only way to go is from Italy. There were ships that went regularly to Shanghai from Genoa, Italy. We boarded a boat, and that ship took us to Shanghai. Yeah, in Shanghai, you had people who welcomed us, assisted the refugees. About 20,000 refugees came to Shanghai over a period of years in the late 30s and early 40s. In Shanghai, conditions were very bad. Food was not a lot of food around, but as far as I know, we were taken care of, and they had accommodations for us. Shanghai was an international community. You had Americans, people from England, people from France. Before we came to Shanghai, Jews were very successful in Shanghai. Not only the big businesses, the major hotels were all Jewish-owned. They established people traveled to Shanghai for vacations and everything else. In the 30s, it was very popular tourist attractions. That's why big cruise ships at that time stopped off in Shanghai. big entertainers, a lot of bars and everything else.
The journey to Shanghai was very traumatic because that time it was 1939 in August, and 2 weeks later Hitler declared war. So we were like the last ship to get out still. So now we had a little Japanese freighter that took us over, and we hit a typhoon. We were all strapped in our beds, I don't know, a day or two, whatever it lasted. And people were seasick, couldn't go to the bathroom. And I don't want to tell you what it smelled like. And we finally limped in. We made it into Shanghai. And when we got there, the people said we were a month late. And when we finally did get in, the music was playing and they were singing and dancing to welcome us that we made it. When we arrived in Shanghai, I was 6 years old. We were put in a camp. There must have been maybe 200 people or more in one room. There was one door and no windows. People, most of them couldn't even sleep. It was so hot, it was impossible. The food, everything was contaminated. The water was contaminated. The heat was 120 degrees 8 months out of the year. People were dying constantly from diseases. I had a few surgeries done, not major, but minor surgeries. They didn't give me the anesthesia because they used it for emergencies. So I was operated on without anesthesia. I had a splinter under my thumb, which infected my hand up to my elbow. And I would have died because it would have been blood poisoning. So somebody was sitting on top of me, strapped me up, and they were cutting my nail off and taking out the splinter. And without anesthesia. And what happened was that when I was finished, they put me to sleep. My mother said I slept for 2 days. I didn't eat, I didn't go to the bathroom. And when I woke up, I was hoarse, I couldn't talk from screaming. There was an Indian Jewish man who was a multimillionaire. And they built a school for us in Shanghai. And it was called Mr. Kaduri, and it was called the Kaduri School. The school that Mr. Kaduri built for us, they had English teachers. They didn't have any German teachers. So what they did was, the first thing that we had to learn was the ABC. I didn't know the ABC, I didn't know how to read or write or anything. So we had double trouble. Within 6 months, I learned not only how to read and write, but I also learned the English language. Everybody was friendly because we all went through the same thing. We all couldn't go out to play. We all were discriminated against. Matter of fact, I was so shy, I didn't even know how to say hello to somebody because I never met other children. And it took me a long, long time to act a little bit normal.
He's sent to Siberia because Siberia alone is bigger than all United States. Siberia is very big, very cold, and it's like a jungle. And these young people that run away, so they sent to Siberia, they cut wood, big trees, that 3 people can take it, a tree. It was no chainsaws with a saw, 2 people, a big saw. He cut the wood. And that's why a lot of Jewish people live in long barracks with no partition. Everybody sleep on straw. All families with children. It was terrible cold in Siberia, wintertime. It goes down to 42 degrees below zero. No stores, there was no food. No doctors, no medicine. Nothing, it's a jungle. My mother was staying in the line for pieces small bread. When my mother, she dropped dead from hunger, staying in the line for a piece of bread in 42 degrees below zero. 3 years old, can remember. It's like a foggy, I see a face, but I don't know, recognize what face is it.
All I know about labor, because my mother told me one time the story, we must have been either in caves or in huts. All I know is that my father used to be a lumberjack, so he used to work out in the forest to chop down trees. They told me about later how cold it was, freezing temperatures. My mother told me one story. I must have been a little over a year old, and I was a toddler. And I was running and looking for trouble. So apparently there was like a jar of clear water, or I thought it was water in the corner. And I picked it up, and I thought it was water because we didn't have that much to drink. Oh, we had drink, but no food. And it was kerosene. And the reason they found me a little bit later on, my mother was looking for me, and they found me on the floor. One of the ladies found out what it was, the bottle, and they said, you know what? If you get some cream, some sweet cream too, and have the cream, maybe it will help absorb it. Now, when my father came back from work, he was working all day in very cold, severe weather with the trees, without chopping down trees. He came in and he ran right out to look for a farm, to look for a farm to get me some cream. You know, apparently he spent half the night going looking for things. He found finally a place and was able to get a cream from the farmer. And apparently, and the farmer's looking for money. My father had no money, but so he's looking for, so my father had a silk shirt. He removed his silk shirt and gave him the shirt for a little bit of cream. Apparently it came back, they gave me the sweet cream. I was out for about 6 months, my mother told me, and apparently it helped me. I guess I survived. I'm here.
In 1941, there was a war between the National Chinese, Chiang Kai-shek, and the Japanese. And the Japanese in 1941 captured Shanghai. At the beginning, they didn't bother us, you know, the refugees, Jewish refugees. The Japanese bothered the Chinese. They used to shoot them, kill them in the street. In the morning when you woke up, you saw dead bodies in the streets. But when Japan started the war with the United States, then the Japanese started mistreating us, the Jews. We used to live in a nice neighborhood with houses, and they the Japanese forced us to move to a Jewish ghetto. And that's where we lived after 1941. But life was very bad because food-wise, we were very restricted, and you lived with 10 other families. You really had no privacy. You had beds, and it was really very bad. We were in the ghetto until 1945. And 1945, the American Army came in. Japanese surrendered. American troops came into Shanghai. The American troops were very generous, you know. Whoever had candy bars. Now, I remember later on, you know, all the Nestle chocolates. The first time I had American candies, everything that came.
The Japanese were at war with the United States after Pearl Harbor. So what they did was the Japanese, every time they built up a radio tower, which was their communication, they could not conduct the war without these radio towers. American bombers came over and bombed them down. So what the Japanese did was they built the radio towers right next to our camps. We had 5 camps, and next to our school. So when the bombers came over, They tried to hit that radio tower next to our school. Well, how it happened, we all don't know. We kids, we were in school. And they missed the radio tower. They missed our school. They went right across the street. The Japanese school was right across from our school. And they hit the Japanese school. And that day, over 500 children were killed in that school. Not one of us was hurt. It was like a miracle. We all couldn't believe it. And when the bombing was over, there wasn't a building standing. We could not even get back to our camp. So what happened was the next day when we woke up, we didn't see any Japanese. So all of us said, oh my goodness. I think America is sick and tired of a war. I think they're gonna bomb us all. So the Japanese ran away. Somebody came running from our refugees into our camp and said, the war's over. And they said, you're crazy. We couldn't believe it. 7.5 years we were sitting in China. And he said, no, it can't be true. He said, yes, the American sailors, the ships are there. And everybody started singing and dancing, and we finally celebrated. I was 12 years old.
We got out of Siberia in 1942. The camp, this labor camp was liberated. My father was able to go a place called Jambul, which is in Russia, Uzbekistan, I think it was the name. He found a job in a factory, and we lived in a little bit of a cabin or bungalow, and there was one room, was everything in one room, you know, everything. I remember there was a guard dog named Rabchik. I remember the name. All I know, in 1945, right after the war, all I know that we're boarding actually waiting for a train to arrive. I saw this big, monster coming at us with the steam on all sides, and actually ran away. And apparently that's when we boarded the train to go to take us back to Poland. And we wound up in this DP camp called Donabastion. Well, in Donabastion, I was there for about 2 years. Second DP camp, they took us to a place called Fahrenwald. There I got my education. There we had schools already in this place. We had people come from Israel teaching us Hebrew. This is a building in Fahrenwald, DP camp. You see, it's more modern. Yes. Yeah.
I was in Siberia till the war was finished in 1945. The American army with the Russian army, they came together and they defeated Hitler. And the war finished 1945. So I was already 8 years old till I came back to Poland. I landed up in a foster home, orphanage. They call this town in Poland Krakow. This was already much better than in Siberia because there was a kitchen, they give us food, we play outside on the grass, playing soccer. And it was children playing. It was a normal life almost. In 1967, I was 21. I immigrated with my father and older brother to Israel. We went in on a boat in Poland to Haifa, Israel. I saw the first time in my life a banana. I never see a banana. I never eat a banana. The first time in my life, I eat a piece of chocolate. And in Poland or Siberia, no bananas, no chocolate. I went down from the boat in Haifa. He come a man to me in a uniform like Israeli soldier. He took me to a military base. They give me a uniform with shoes and a rifle, and they told me, you a soldier now in the Israeli army. And then start the 6-Day War in 1967. When I was fighting in Gaza, after the war, I hear they looking for people to work in Dead Sea, to build on the Dead Sea dams, a dam, 3 kilometers or 3 kilometers. It was very hard. It's so hard. You can boil a egg. You make a scrambled egg on a stone. When I was working 9 years, I didn't have a profession. I started to learn by one contractor, a plumber, when I learned plumbing.
The length of time in Farnwell, the sleeping camp, we were there at least 3 years. My father was in contact with a cousin in America. Apparently you needed a sponsor to get you to America. It was the General Blatchford, who was actually a military carrier ship. I remember a little bit about being on the ship, and because of running around, I was meeting the sailors on the ship. I was the only one that was not sick on board ship. My parents were sick, a lot of people were sick. I was running around like a sailor. It took only, 5-7 days, or 5 days, I think, aboard.
When I was in Israel, before I immigrated to America, he came a woman from America to look for a husband. Somebody told me, listen, come over to me, a friend, I'm gonna introduce you. I came to his apartment and I see this woman, I marry her, that I know her 3 days. When I marry her, I immigrated to America.
I left Shanghai when I was 12 years old. We were fortunate enough to get visas to come to the United States. Transportation to the United States was very difficult. We finally got transportation on an American troop ship. We were at the bottom of the ship. You know, our trip from Shanghai to San Francisco was about 4 weeks on a troop ship that had, not like the cruises now. The ships were terrible vomiting, terrible, and the food was lousy.
We were on a army transport ship. It wasn't a luxury ship. It was like where the soldiers were kept. And we came from China to San Francisco. I was 14 years old by the time I got to the United States. And I went straight into high school. It was very, very difficult for me. It was scary because I have never been on a bus. I've never seen a subway. We had no transportation because we lived in camps. And so everything was like new. I didn't know a soul. I had no friends, I had no family except my parents and my grandmother. My mother, unfortunately, had kidney failure, and during the war we didn't have doctors, so she didn't even know it. It was neglected. By the time we came to the United States, she had to go on dialysis. So when I graduated high school, I wanted to go to college, but I saw how hard my parents were working, so I said I have to help them. So I went and I got a job, and I helped them out so my mother didn't have to work.
We arrived in New York in 1947, and my parents found an apartment in Brownsville, Brooklyn. People treated us nicely because most of the people where we lived were refugees also. They came from Europe and everything else, and mostly Jewish neighborhood, you know, at synagogues and kosher food, and so it was fine. We grew up as kids and went to school. I graduated high school, and then I went to Brooklyn College, had a lot of friends. After college, I went to law school, New York Law School. I became a lawyer, and I became a prosecutor for 4 years at the district attorney's office. Then I decided it's enough. I got a pension from the state, and I went to private practice. And for the last 50 years, I was a criminal defense lawyer. My specialty was defending people charged with crimes. I had 4 daughters, all married, all have children, and they're all okay. And I'm a grandfather over and over again.
America is America. Everybody likes America. Who doesn't like America? God bless America. So I work by a contractor, plumbing, but I was working by a private contractor very hard. But this time, when I came to America, I was a strong man, very strong. I pick up 8-feet pipes, cast iron, for sewer pipes in Kingsbrook Jewish Medical Center in Brooklyn. I went in and they accept me a maintenance man. I work over there 25 years in the hospital. Then I retire, I move with my wife to Aventura, but she died of Alzheimer's. So my son told me, "What you gonna live in Aventura? Come here to Boca. You're gonna live in Central Village, or you're gonna visit your grandchildren." When I live, I see.
They're
the
so
grandchildren.
cute.
We parked in New York Harbor. It was in February of 1951, okay? And it was a very good experience because I was on board ship. Remember what was that? I saw the Statue of Liberty. So somebody explained to me that this big statue was actually donated by the French government, and you know, and it was nice to see in the first time. And then apparently they got us an apartment in Brooklyn, New York. And that's where we started living, in Brooklyn, New York after that. I went to high school after the yeshiva. In high school, we lived in Brownsville, in Brooklyn, New York. And then we moved. My father got a business in Brooklyn, an area called Crown Heights. It's a produce business, which I helped out. I got transferred from the high school in Brooklyn, called Jefferson, out in East New York. And I transferred to a high school called Tilden. And apparently I graduated Tilden, and then I went to college and so forth and so on. Basically, I became an engineer. I worked for a testing laboratory for many, many years, and I'm retired now. Short story.
This story, a major takeaway is that the Jewish people are extremely resilient, and in the face of something as awful as this, they come back, they make families, and they have a normal life afterwards, even after going through all of that.
I believe that after learning from Mr. Leo Kimmel, it's my job and my duty now to move forward with their story and teach other people about this historic event.
I think the interview went well. He was such an incredible individual. He was so funny and has such a strong character. And it was so interesting to hear his story, and it was really touching.
If I had to describe him in one word, it would be empowered, because the upbringing that he had has only made him stronger. And even after being placed in displacement camps and being thrown into cattle cars with his family, not knowing where they were heading next, has only made him stronger. And he still was able to come with a smile on his face and share his story and be excited to tell the youth of everything that he went through.
I just say she's strong. I mean, the things I've heard her go through, I couldn't imagine going through myself or anyone I know going through it. And I'd asked her how she felt about being liberated, and she just said that she felt numb. I expected her to say she was excited, happy, you know, it's a big moment, it's a big change in your life after going through a lot. So when she said she felt numb, it kind of made me realize like how much she really went through and how much it impacted her as a person.
She has gone through so much through the war, and she had battled illnesses, and she really went through a lot of hardships, and she still kept persisting no matter what throughout the war, fighting to survive and make it to freedom. And I think that's really inspiring, and a lot of people can take from that.
I just really wanted to say how grateful I am, grateful we all are, because it's just really impactful and important for past generations to pass things like this on. And for us to learn our history firsthand is a very important thing for everybody. Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys, so we want to know a little bit about how you feel about the process of having participated in this project. First, why did you want to participate in this project?
I've already had a big interest on the Holocaust and World War II to begin with, and I think learning about and participating in Names Not Numbers has definitely built on what I already knew and is growing my interest.
I feel like as a Jewish person who feels involved in the Jewish community, it's my duty to learn and teach about the Holocaust. So getting to do these interviews further grew my knowledge of the Holocaust and allowed me to teach others what I learned.
I'm not gonna say I know more than people who get their information from a book, but being there to get the information from the person who was in the Holocaust, I feel like that's better than learning it from a book. So that's how I got my education on the Holocaust, from the person who was actually in there.
Was there anything when you were interviewing the survivors that stood out as particularly interesting or meaningful, something that you took away as a message that you want to help carry forward?
Initially, I thought that Jewish ghettos existed only in German-occupied territories, but apparently they also existed in far-out places like Shanghai, China. And hearing that is just interesting to me because it's different from what I was always taught. I always knew Jewish ghettos existed, but I didn't know they extended so far.
Interviewing him, he kept cracking jokes and everything, and even though he went through such traumatic experiences, it was great to see that he still found joy in currently living, and even as his old age now, he's still a wonder to be around. And he was honestly a great entertainment for us too, being behind the cameras and everything. It was great to hear his story and hear how he can still find joy now.
A lot of people associate their childhood with positive memories. It's them growing up. It's what really makes a lot of people, this generation, a lot of them were raised in concentration camps or raised fleeing, so that's all the memories that they really have from their childhood. So I think that really just leaves a lasting effect with them, and it's who they're gonna be, it's who they are, it's what they grew up with, it's what they knew. So I think that just being really ingrained in them just really makes their stories more unique.
I expected it to be a lot of the other school projects, just you do a poster board and then submit it and then that's it, but it ended up being cool because you actually got to experience it firsthand and talk to survivors of the actual event. So it was just a cool experience, and I did not expect to enjoy it that much.
My message to the new generation is we have to live in peace together. That you are Muslim or you are Catholic or this, we have to live together. I would say almost like brothers.
I think that kids should take away from his message that there's no room for hate in the world and that everyone should be treated equally, no matter who you are, what you believe in, because everyone's a person at the end of the day and they shouldn't be defined by their beliefs.
My message is that everybody should learn as much as they can about the Holocaust. They should try to go to presentations where there's a survivor speaking, because they're not going to get a chance to do that in the very near future. And they should learn everything that they can so they can stop this from happening again.
And it's not just the young age, it's even the older generation, the people that still hate. And it's not even just Jewish people, it's in people in general. A lot of people hate for no reason. And you need to tell them that that's not okay. And the more we hate, if we don't want a future generation turning out and possibly having something like the Holocaust happen again.
I visit the concentration camp in Warsaw, but I see the mountains of human hair, the mountains of shoes, the mountains of clothing. I see the ovens, I see the gas chambers.
How inhuman those Nazis were. They were like animals. I mean, putting these people, you know, to all these tortures and death. We couldn't understand why such people existed. But, you know, how can you do things like this? And you can see later on from Rex, we saw that, you know, that for Hitler.
The war made us tough. We are fighters. And we did learn that from being quiet. I remember my parents, it's a fad, it's gonna blow over, it can't happen. But it did happen. And the only thing I learned is never to be quiet. You have something to say it.
People just need to treat each other with kindness and equality overall. Everybody is equal no matter what their background is, who their ancestors are.
With respect and with education, because respect and education are, I'd say, probably the only ways to combat ignorance, and anti-Semitism stems from ignorance.
It's not right to discriminate, and we need to make sure that everyone understands that kindness is one of the most important characteristics in a person, and throughout our world we need to know that that's like a very important factor to keep being kind to people and respecting people no matter where they come from.
Hope, okay, all right, is hope. Got to have faith, okay, which I have. You got to be positive thinking, okay, which I do. Be confident of yourself. Keep the memory alive to show the whole world, you know, that shouldn't happen again.
I think one of the biggest things that we can learn is this really happened, is this was really a person's life, a real child's life that this person went through. We are very fortunate to be in the place that we're at now, and we're very fortunate to have the life that we have. And I'm very fortunate to have the life that I have.
Well, I'm glad to see you're taking interest in the Holocaust, because according to what I hear is most high school students don't know anything about the Holocaust. But now you're getting to learn something about what had happened. If you get somebody who is willing to listen to you, you tell them about what you know about what happened to the Jews way back. And by letting people know, you avoid this happening over here in this country.
Thank you, Leo, for coming to talk to us. It's really important that we hear your message and we hear your story so that we can go spread awareness to other people and tell them about your story. And coming and putting on such a brave face to talk about such a horrible time is really, really inspiring.
Thank you so much, Mordecai, for coming to our school and speaking to us and allowing us to document your story for the next future generations and my generation.
Thank you so much for being a part of this project and telling us your story. It was so meaningful for all of us students, and I feel like it's so important for you to tell your story to younger generations so we all know what you've been through.
I want to say thank you very much for telling us your story and coming here, because not everyone likes to relive that. Like, just thank you.
Try to teach the world and try to do your best to combat this, this hate that's going on all the world. You know, you could be one of the people that could turn things around.